Hello everyone and welcome to Capes, Cowls Masks, the show where we uncover the world of soups and science fiction. I'm your host, Jake Hart. I'm a podcaster and a writer for the Fresh Take Hub, and as always I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts.
Hi everyone, it's Tom, your comic book shogun here, who is once again laboured with illness, so this will be a fun one. Cool, yeah.
And I'm David Osger. I am a podcaster also and a multimedia journalist. And I'm feeling decent, pretty healthy, so I'm quite lucky, I suppose. Yeah.
Dave. Why don't you go fuck yourself, alright?
I concur, Dave. All healthy on this end as
all
well.
right. Clearly, Chepstow is healthier than Swansea.
Oh,
right?
yes.
We've established this now.
Yeah, you're in Student City right there.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I would say
Don't
so.
I know it?
This episode, we're going to be discussing DC FanDome 2021. We're going to be talking about and breaking down all the trailers, the concept art, announcements, and much more. And Dave, in a way, this is coming full circle, because whenever I think of DC FanDome, I will always think of the start of this podcast as well, because it was pretty much our very first episode, apart from like the welcome episode that we did that got us running on this podcast. And in a way, it was like the podcast was designed so we could talk about DC FanDome, and then it sort of sped off from there. So here we are, over 1 year later. What do you think? What are your thoughts, Dave, on DC FanDome, the second edition?
Well, I'm a bit
Overall
disappointed
thoughts.
that you said, like, DC FanDome always reminds me of this podcast. I was like, oh, I thought you were going to say me then. I was like, damn. I was like, oh. But, yeah, I think it goes to show the strength of what we talked about last time as well, that we were like, oh, this, feels really refreshing. It's like, as close as you can get to a kind of fan experience, a convention, a kind of live event, but done virtually. Probably one of the best iterations of a virtual event that we've seen. And I think that carried through. It very much felt like a successor to last year. They carried on the same sort of visuals and presenting style and footage in between. So I think they pulled it off really well, which was pretty much by doing, let's just do the exact same thing that we did last year and just carried that through. In a way, it was probably better that they didn't go, oh, let's try something different now and let's do this and do that. And obviously, while there was a bit more of people like in studios or sets and that kind of stuff, and less like Zoom talk, they didn't try and sort of muddy it or confuse it by having like them in like an arena with like some fans like socially distanced around the place or something like that. So yeah, I think they pulled it off really well. And I think that the content in between was really enjoyable as well. I think especially after we had things like the Disney Investor Day and stuff like that, and when you've got stuff in between different panels and talks, and you're like, this is boring. Whereas, this kind of stuff was like, oh, the history of Batman and, like celebrating Wonder Woman and what do fans think of this? It was, it was very clever. And I thought that they handled all of that really well. So bravo to DC once again.
Good stuff, good stuff. How about yourself, Tom? What do you think of this year's FanDome?
Oh, I had a whale of a time watching it. Yeah, I didn't watch last year's FanDome. I just caught like obviously all the announcements as they came out in the preceding days. So I wasn't actually 100% sure what to expect from it. I found myself like really, really enjoying it. And I mean, seeing like all the Jim Lee art backdrops, it was just beautiful to look at. Lots of great announcements that really excited me. Lots of sneak peeks that have really excited me. Slightly concerned by the omission of Green Lantern from proceedings, but I'm choosing to be optimistic and not take that as a bad sign. But overall, it was a very, very fun experience. Although I'm reminded of a tweet that I saw in the aftermath of DC FanDome. I can't remember who tweeted it, but they basically said that after today, part of me is hoping that Disney Plus Day is only like 30 minutes to an hour long. It was a long ride, but Batman trailer made it so worth it in the end. So DC gets a thumbs up from me, 10 out of 10, and can't wait for next year's. If they do it in the same way next year. I don't know what'll happen next year. Maybe we'll get one. Who knows?
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what they do next year with the easing of the pandemic and everything else attached to that. So we'll see. But in terms of this year, yeah, I had a blast as well. Dave came over to mine and we had a great time watching it together, munching on snacks and just doing the Leonardo DiCaprio meme all night long, pointing at the screen at everything that was announced. So it was a good blast. I will say, though, that I think I enjoyed last year's a tiny bit more, and I think that's nothing on the actual fandom itself, on how it was organized and how it was presented. I think just last year we were all so starved for content because of lockdowns during the pandemic and stuff like that, the delays and close of the cinemas and delays of all the films. We were just asking for anything. So when they announced all that stuff there and gave us all the trailers, it was just so exciting to think, oh, all of this is coming down the line. So we're in a more stable world now. The world's moving. Hollywood, the cinemas are back in business. So for me, it was a different experience. For me, it was more like, let's see what DC have up their sleeve rather than, I just want to see something. Do you know what I mean? But obviously the main event for me was the Batman. And we suspected they were going to open with that, but they were like, nope, this is the main event, and we're going to make you sit through the entire 3.5 hour convention. And like Dave, I think they succeeded in this. I think all the presenters did a great job. And I think all the panels were really well paneled and moderated. And yeah, some really exciting stuff to get into. So let's begin then with finally, The Rock has come to the DCEU. We opened DC FanDome with The Rock himself on his own, topped way too tight for his body, presenting the first footage of Black Adam. So it wasn't a trailer. They said they were still in production, working on the movie, but they managed to compile little bits. I wouldn't say it's a full scene, but it looks like fragments of the same scene cut together of the introduction to Black Adam, his entrance into our world. So, Tom, I'm going to start with you. What did you think of finally seeing some footage of Black Adam after being officially cast as the character in 2014?
Yeah, I think long-time listeners of the show know that I have a frustrating relationship with this film because I am so hyped for it and so excited that it's finally happening. But sometimes the way The Rock bigs it up, talks about it, hypes it up, it just grates on me a little bit. So finally being able to see some footage, I remember just being sat there going, right, finally maybe I can see what The Rock is talking about. And oh my Lord, if I did not smell what The Rock was cooking. It was absolutely fucking insane. I was intrigued right from the start when they were coming into the cave, cavern, temple thing that they find. And they're looking over the inscriptions and she says the word Shazam. And then you finally see him. And you don't see him. You just see part of his face underneath the hood, but automatically such an imposing figure. And I did truly feel like this is Black Adam. And now I understand why The Rock was saying beforehand, you'll see why I was born to play this character. I actually now find it hard to disagree with him. And you know what? All I'll say is that the hierarchy of the DC universe is about to change forever.
So he's been saying for many, many years.
I finally believe him now.
Dave, what did you think? We were very excited that they decided to open with Black Adam. Finally, we get to see something. What do you think?
Yeah, I think my feelings haven't changed too much on the film. In many ways, I think that to carry on from what we were saying before, but overall feelings of it, Black Adam kind of sticks to that idea of I thought it was a great continuation from last year because it was one in some ways negative of last year was the fact there was a bit like Disney Invest Day and they were and this and this and this and then you get this and you're whoa, when is this all coming? Are you sure you're going to be able to make this all in the next year or two? Because it seemed very much like they were just pushing it all. But with DC, it was at least less like Disney in that we're we're thinking of making this film and we're also making this series and we're also doing this. It was projects that were we've made this film and we are shooting this right now, etc. And so I felt that it was quite a natural progression to go, hey, last year we revealed the Flash logo and the costume. Now you get to see a bit of footage. And it was a bit the same here. It was the kind of You saw some concept art last year. Now you get to see a bit more of the cast that we've, gradually revealed throughout the year. And the fact that we've been covering that kind of feels like we've gone on this journey with them. Like, oh, look, it's our good friend, Pierce Brosnan. Like, yeah, we remember talking about you getting cast, etc. And there he is, talking about the role, etc. And I think that was my favorite part of the entire thing. That was the bit which I was most excited. Like, ooh, every film fan loves a good behind the scenes and seeing actors like talk about the roles. And I thought that was the best part for me. So not very good sign that like every other actor bar Dwayne The Rock Johnson got me excited. I was like, oh yeah, like all the actors made me want to meet those characters. Like, is there like Cyclone and Atom Smasher? I was like, oh yeah, like they came across as really charismatic actors and really capable actors. And while I was a bit like Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate, I was a bit like, okay, like it seems a cool, funny idea. Not sure if I'm completely sold on it. But once I saw him there on the set, I was like, okay, no, I'm in on this. This seems perfect. Yeah. So
Holding the
just
helmet.
the way he was talking about it, I was just like, I just want this right now. I wanted to see that. So I feel that because of that, then when you just get this kind of generic, super villain / hero lands in the middle of a room, it just very much was kind of stuff we've seen before. I felt it was very much like Loki in the Avengers films. It was very much like Apocalypse in X-Men, etc. Like this kind of like, they've been awakened, etc. So yeah, I'm gonna be making those comparisons when I'm watching that film.
Sorry, I just remember when we watched that during DC FanDome, we both said at the same time,
Yeah.
I am Loki and I am glorious.
So yeah, I kind of just want to see Dwayne The Rock Johnson just go up to a TV and be like, these machines.
I would like for him to not do that, if it's all the same to you.
We've already.
So yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't very impressed by that clip. It didn't stick with me very much. I didn't feel that I had like a new flavor or a new idea what the film was about. Again, the fact that Tom even said there, like, you'll see why I was born to play this character. And I'm not denying that he is. Like, you see him and you're like, oh yeah, you definitely are born to play that character. But no, in this, like, there's still an element in my mind of like, Harrison Ford was born to play Indiana Jones. Does Harrison Ford go around saying, I was born to play Indiana Jones? No. So there's something still very douchebaggy to me about going around saying that. But it is kind of his jam. I understand that. But I just wouldn't be surprised if we have a trailer in the future, which is just basically Dwayne The Rock Johnson bitch slapping Superman out of the sky and being like, this is my franchise now. This is why you don't get Henry Cavill. So, yeah, I'm excited for all the other characters and all of the kind of like mythical, ancient stuff and the idea of getting that Justice Society, etc. But yeah, I just wasn't that thrilled on his stuff. Even the logo I thought was a bit like, oh, this little like spray of gold. And I was a bit like,
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
And
there.
especially the fact that he like breaks that guy to dust. I think I said to Jake at the time, I was like, is he a hero? Is he a villain? He's just literally killed somebody in front of our eyes. And I don't see it as a kind of like, oh, it's like Joker or it's like Deadpool or something, like an anti-hero or like a villain that that you shouldn't support. This guy is supposed to be leading a team of like characters like Dr. Fate, etc. So I'm still a bit confused on what we're meant to think of him as a character as well. And I think
dude's a king.
Yeah, and I think the Dwayne The Rock
thing.
Johnson's kind of like arrogance doesn't help that either. So.
No. Yeah, I think I fall sort of in between both of you on this, where, like Dave, I am more intrigued in this film with the Justice Society, with Dr. Fate. He's one of my favorite characters within DC. Cyclone and Hawkman. Aldous Hodge, when he was talking about the character, looks incredible. They showed a little bit of the costume as well, which looks fantastic. So I'm really excited for all the lore and mythology surrounding this film, especially because they said they're going back to like ancient Egypt, because we saw like in the concept art of The Rock, being like a slave in ancient Egypt and stuff like that. So that's what I'm really, like you, Dave, I'm looking forward to all the mythology and lore behind this film, the world building. However, while I do like the clip that they showed, because it shows what of a badass he is and how powerful he can be in a way. I love the mood of it. I love the tone of it. The fact that he was like, shh, and he turned that guy to dust. I was like, okay. I think that's just because he's just landed. He's like, what the fuck is going on? People are just shooting at me. I'm just going to kill someone. Why not? I think the story is going to be like an anti-hero sort of story. I think we're going to get something similar along the lines of, dare I say, Venom, but let's not go into that. So that's what I think what we're gonna do. I'm unsure though if he's gonna be leading the Justice Society as a team. I don't know. For me, the way it sounds is that maybe him. Because this film has been through so many iterations that at some point with this current script, why don't we throw the Justice Society in here somehow and try to connect like the mythology and lore to Black Adam. So I'm not entirely sure what this film is going to be in a sense, but I'm excited nevertheless.
I've got a feeling it could end up with Black Adam being on the throne of Kahndaq. That could be how the movie ends.
That could happen. That could happen. I am excited for the prospect of where they go forward with this, if they're going to, interconnect it with the Shazam films, because they're saying the same word. Isn't it weird to summon the dude? So is that going to be a thing in the future? I look forward to that, if that is a thing. But yeah, overall, we'll see what happens with this film. I'm still cautious with The Rock as well. Sure, physically, he looks the part, and I don't deny he's going to kick ass in all the action. I don't know about, him leading this film as an actor and having the weight and gravitas you need for this sort of character. And the fact that, we saw him kick ass, but we didn't hear him speak in this yet. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear some dialogue coming from him. And then I think I'll go, okay, I think I know where they're going with this film. But we'll see what happens.
If it's genuinely the Justice Society versus him, then I will respect the hell out of this film. If he's like the villain, that would be
I would like that,
awesome. Yeah. And if that's what they're building up to, is he's a douchebag, I'd be like, that is great. Because then he could still be that kind of character in Shazam. And what better person than Zachary Levi to be like, man, you're a douche.
Yeah, we're getting into the Shazam much later in the show. Tom, what do we got next then?
Oh, it's everyone's favorite subject. It's the CW. We actually got some exciting news from the CW. We'll cover it briefly. The main headline, though, is that finally, after 8 seasons, well, actually 7 seasons, because season 8 is the one that's... No, it is 8. I can't remember. But anyway, we're finally getting golden boots on the Flash in the TV show. Grant Gustin, I say he seemed excited on DC FanDome.
He looked tired.
He looked very tired. I feel like... I think they have been doing a lot of filming recently, so it wouldn't surprise me if they were just he was about to go to bed, and they were like, can you quickly just do a bit on DC FanDome? Because he was just there yeah, I'm excited for the boots. The boots coming. Yeah. Personally, I think they should have been there from the start, but whatever. What else did we get? We got some news on Stargirl. They're apparently doing Shadowlands, where there's going to be she's basically going to be in a black and white world, which kind of looks cool. We got some new news on Batwoman, so we're getting more Batwoman, and it looks like Batwoman and Alice are going to be teaming up. Which is a plot point nobody in the CW saw coming, I'm sure.
We also had...
And then we got the first...
Sorry, didn't we also have the horrible armored Batman that looked like a robot dog?
Yes, Batwing.
Yeah, Batwing.
Yeah, I really, really hope they... I think it's just the helmet needs a bit of refining. I think the helmet looks too clunky in comparison to the rest of it.
That whole suit, bro.
Well, yeah, let's hope they do refine it. I mean, he is a bit of a... His character's supposed to be a bit of a tinkerer, I guess, so, they can lean into that. But yeah, we got our first look at Naomi, which it was just I think just a brief scene. It wasn't really a trailer or anything, and you didn't really get a full look into her whole deal. But it was very interesting nonetheless, and it looks very well shot, at least. So I'm tentatively excited for that. I have checked out some of the comics. I haven't gone too deep into the character, but I think this is definitely something I'm going to be checking out when it drops. But what did you guys briefly make of the all the CW news? Anything grabbing your attention? Or
I think I said to you that the Legends of Tomorrow just looked like a season of Community, like the pure obscure, crazy stuff that was happening in that literally in which they're like, there's a puppet episode, there's like a Disney animated episode. I was like, what is this turned into? And I think we did have a teaser or something for this before, because there was showing elements of it. I was like, oh wait, I remember seeing some of this, but it was just like cranked up to like an 11, and there was so much of it. I was like, what is this? You know. So I think when you were saying there about like Batwing and stuff, it was like, oh, they could refine the suit, and I'm like, no, it's the CW. There's no refining suits. There's like, you know, if they look bad, they look bad. You know, like I'm sorry, Tom, but yeah,
that's the best you're gonna get, Tom.
I think our only way of getting then a better version of a suit in a CW show is by having it in a movie or something like that. Which, you know, granted, I think the Flash one is maybe the better one of them, and they did have that kind of nice panel with the Supergirl cast, which was a bit weird because, again, I haven't watched the show, but I said to Jake, I always thought that she looked like Supergirl. She seemed good casting. Her suit always actually looked like, yep, that's the character. You've done a good job. It's just like Martian Manhunter and stuff didn't look all that great because of the TV budget. But it was a bit concerning as well that they were like, oh, remember that funny time where this was happening? We were joking about and we were goofing off and we had that stupid line we had to say and all this. I was like, isn't this like sometimes serious comic book show? And you were just like, oh yeah, that was so goofy. Like, what a stupid thing we had to do. And I was just like,
it's their last season, man.
Oh, I know. They were just, but they were looking back on like, yeah, exactly. So yeah, that made me laugh as well.
And you had the one guy in green.
Yes. Amazing cast.
Yeah, we were talking about that guy
amazing.
Being there after like filming overnight. That guy was just literally like, can I at least take the makeup off? Like, no, like literally go there right now.
No, we need to go now. No, nothing really. I mean, Grant Gustin stood out to me, honestly, because he looked tired, but he also looked kind of like, I've done 8 seasons of this show. What could possibly else could I say about my character? He was like, yeah, we're getting the gold boots.
Yeah.
It really reminded me of the Simpsons episode where they're just like, what can we do to make Malibu Stacy like more popular and compete against this new doll? And then they're like, oh, they give her a new hat. It's like that moment, like, it's just the same Malibu Stacy but with this stupid hat. And it's like, it just seemed like that.
Yeah. And then the Superman and Lois thing, they were like, we're going to take you around the kitchen now and just go through that. I was like, okay, this is a bit strange. Like, you could have showed some footage or something, but whatever. Yeah, the CW is the CW. You guys know my thoughts on it. I don't really watch any of that anymore. So, but for the people who love it, fair play to them. And I am excited. Probably not going to watch it, or maybe watch it in the future. But the Naomi show, because it's got Ava DuVernay behind it as well. So I'm always interested in a new character because she's also relatively new to the DC comics as well.
Yeah, I think we said before she's like the fastest characters go from like comic to TV or screen. Yeah. And you mentioned Ava DuVernay. Like, I also got to shout out, like, DMZ is definitely intriguing me. We got a little bit on DMZ. Get into that. Yeah,
we'll get into that in the HBO Max TV stuff. So, Dave, what do we got next then? Where are we off to?
Yeah, well, just like at DC FanDome. Hey guys, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. We get our first look at the Black Mantis costume. Oh my god, I can't wait to see that. Right, Jake? Right? You know you love it. Yeah, back to normal me. Anyway.
You'd make a great presenter.
Yep.
I cannot wait for the CW, guys. I cannot wait. You can see the tears in my eyes. No.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
And yeah, so we got our first look at the new Black Mantis costume in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. We also got a lot of concept art, more into what they've said previously about how this is going into like the environmental aspects of it. A bit more look at like Ocean Master. We got a lot of behind the scenes footage. Interestingly, no interview with Amber Heard, but we did get a bit of footage of her doing her thing, but they cut to her, but everyone else in the film was interviewed bar her. I wonder why. And yeah, just a lot of Jason Momoa, including talking about his new costume, which I thought that he rocked pretty well. And yeah, it just seems that they're very much carrying on the kind of goofy, almost like 90s in some ways, aesthetic of like these sets which have like big vivid red neon lights and very much going with like the practical with CG elements, having some really ludicrous, crazy stuff going on, which James Wan himself said that, we're embracing what people loved about the first film, which is like a lot of the elaborate nature of it, but we're going to go darker and we're going to go more serious, but we're not going to lose what the original had. So, Jake, is it right to say a big fan of the first one? You're a big apologist of the first film anyway. Yeah.
I would say an apologist. I wouldn't say I'm a big
fan.
You're
a big fan of the octopus that plays drums. So,
yes, he's a stand-up.
How do you feel after seeing this? Do you have more faith, or is it kind of what you expected to see?
I have more faith in this film. To me, seeing what they were doing with this film and hearing James Wan saying, we're gonna lean into the fantasy even more, and seeing the elaborate sets, the costumes, and like some of the designs of the creatures that we're gonna see and stuff like that. Because previously I was skeptical because of James Wan's comments of like, oh, we're gonna go darker, we're gonna explore the depths, and we know he's a big horror guy. I was a bit like, oh, I don't know if that's the right tone for Aquaman. But now seeing this behind-the-scenes reel, hearing his comments, I'm like, okay, we're in good hands. If anything, they're going to go even more bonkers with the second one. So I'm really excited for it. It looks like a really big film, that really swashbuckling adventure style. I love that he mentioned we're going to go all over the globe and actually explore all these kingdoms rather than, just stop by at them as we did in the first one, because the first film was just trying to cram in so much story. And for me, the highlight was seeing the new Black Manta costume, because, my God, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II looks fantastic. I think he's great for the role. I just think he was underserved in the first film. So they really need to play to his strengths, because he's one of the most sought-out actors at the minute. He's such a talent. So really utilize him and make him the main villain, because by what it looks like in the behind-the-scenes stuff we saw, that Orm and Aquaman are going to be teaming up. Well, that's what it looks like to me anyway. So Orm's not going to be the villain in this. So I want to have Black Manta as the villain, the guy that's meant to be scary, and that costume is beautiful. Comic accuracy at its finest right there. So yeah, I'm way more excited for this film now after seeing this little bit of footage and hearing James Wan's comments. And obviously, Jason Momoa, he just oozes charisma, doesn't he? Like, you just can't be mad at the dude. He's just great. So, yeah, I'm always down for anything he's up for. And, yes, I did notice the Amber Heard exclusion there from all the interviews.
Jason Momoa was also a highlight of, like, when they were cutting back and forth, like, at the end when they were like, thank you, fans. And he was like, mahalo, fans, and all this kind of stuff. Like, he really did stand out amongst that. And quickly, I was thinking this because of a certain film I saw recently, but also... just generally, like, after, watching Aquaman, because when I was watching that film, I was like, okay, this is going to be a test of his acting ability, because I don't think the Justice League was really a good, bar in it to sort of judge that on. It really was, like, I've come to really respect him as an actor. Like, yeah, you are an actor. It's not like, at first, I think people kind of saw him as, in that pool of, like, even though he wasn't a wrestler, I think people still saw him as that kind of, like, oh, like, might not be the greatest actor, but he's, like, very muscly, he's very strong, kind of cast for that element, but no, he's got like a lot of charisma, a lot of great elements that he brings to his roles, and I think that he really did shine in that behind the scenes in that way as well. Tom, what did you think?
Yeah, I am actually like way more hyped for this film now, having actually, because I think that was my complaint before when we were talking about the announcement of the title of the film and like James Wan talking about they were going dark with it. I was quite skeptical about that, maybe just not hyped at all, but seeing the set, hearing them talk about what they plan for the film, it has just made me feel like, okay, this is actually a film that I want to see now, and I'm actually excited to see, especially with Black Manta, as you said, Jake, he looks absolutely beautiful. So I'm really hoping as well that they do lean into him being the main villain, because I just think that would be a film I would want to see. Yes, I also noticed the very quick, here's Mira, and then we're turning away. As soon as I saw that, I was just like, yeah, that's going to be blocking up Twitter for the next few days, which it kind of has. But yeah, just quite excited for this one now. Jason Momoa, I've always loved him. I do get what you're saying, Dave, as well, about like he was kind of always seen as just, kind of like he's a big tough guy you cast in that role. But I don't know, after watching the first season of C, I've come to like really like respect him as an actor, and I think this, if he can like bring more of that to this sequel, if they are going to go for like maybe a more mature story but still keeping that like, you know, campy comic book element to it, yeah, I think this is one to look forward to, and 2022 can't come soon enough.
One thing I'll also say about this as well is that, and it sounds weird, but I really liked the music behind the scenes reel, and I think it's pretty much the same music that was in the first film by Rupert Gregson-Williams, who I think did a fantastic job. So more of the same music.
Weirdly,
in the
actually, when we were watching that, I was thinking the same thing, but I was actually like somewhat, like, I don't want to say angry, but I was like, this is the music from the trailer of the first film, because I think I think it was like the track that was used in the Aquaman trailer, and I was like, oh my god, I love this track and stuff like that, and then they didn't use it in the film, and I was like, oh, and like, so even though I liked what Rupert Gregson-Williams did with that film, I was kind of like, I still felt he didn't actually do as well as that track, which is one of those kind of like trailer music tracks that you can get on iTunes and stuff like that, kind of like that, yeah, like the Black Widow one and stuff we got, so you can get it. I will share the link with you guys later. So I think they were using that one. I was like, why are you teasing me with this again? Actually use it in the film. But I suppose that's the same as like the Black Widow one, etc. But I also agree with you guys. I think while obviously like, I wasn't as big a fan, like I loved the fantasy elements of the first one, the kind of like world building and the kind of more vivid look to it, and the potential of what we could get with all the different characters. I felt they just kind of like buckled through all the lunacy and just overstuff in that film, and just like the crazy antics that happen in it. But hopefully with this one, maybe they will sort of like, it seems like they were, as we said before, kind of undoing some of the wrongs in terms of like, oh, we'll focus more on the environmental aspect, we will, you know, like make it darker, etc., etc. I like the new suit. I think that I was surprised when I saw Black Manta in the first trailer for the first film, like somewhat faithful, and I was like, oh wow, they've actually gone with the big head. I always imagined that they would just, you know, do some like small eyes or something like that. So now to see that suit compared to this one, you're like, oh wow, that does kind of look like crap compared to this, because we were kind of lucky to go get what we did there, but now that looks like horrible compared to like how glorious this looks. It looks so nice.
Baby steps, Dave.
Yeah,
Baby
exactly.
Steps. We've come a long way since those X-Men one
exactly.
suits.
So it looks perfectly like right out of the comics, right out of like animation, just like polished, as you said. You know, fantastic performance as well from Abdul Mateen II.
Abdul Mateen.
So yeah, I am more excited. Still a bit wary because I'm not always a big fan of James Wan. And after the first film, but yeah, more excited. So can't wait to see what else we get to see.
Good stuff. So next up, we got Milestone. So quickly cover this. So they have announced 3 movies in the work. Well, I say announced. They've announced one. No, they announced 2. One we already knew, and that was the Static Shock movie being produced by Michael B. Jordan. And they also announced another. They announced an animated film. Or was it 2 animated films?
Didn't they announce one which was kind of like, it's going to be like bringing together many of the characters from Milestone, like in a sort of like team up kind of Spider-Verse kind of thing?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, sorry. 2 animated films and the live action Static Shock film. So we didn't get much info on the Static Shock film other than it's still happening. And we'll get into this a bit later with some of the other projects, but I'm still bummed out that Static Shock and Blue Beetle and some of the other projects are going straight to HBO Max, because I think it's so important that film hits cinemas and hits as maximum people as possible on the biggest screen possible, because it could be so important for so many people, this character. That's just what I have to say about that, really. But it's exciting to see Milestone back in the game. They are such a legacy imprint from the 90s. It's good to see them up and running, and for the community of the African American community, you know what I mean? They need this for them as well in their community to be represented in comic books and superhero stuff. So Tom, what did you think of all of this stuff?
Yeah, I enjoyed the panel. I think I could probably listen to those guys talk for like hours. I could have like happily like had the whole 4 hours of DC fandom just be them talking about Milestone. I am with you that it is very getting that a lot of these projects are going straight to HBO Max. I know we've talked about it a lot before on the show, but it is still very frustrating. But yeah, it's definitely very exciting that the Static Shock movie is still happening, and I'm very intrigued by these animated features they've got coming out as well. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for the news on that. But yeah, it'll just be nice to see maybe Milestone get a bit more into the public eye and just reach a lot more people, because I think, as you said, Jake, it can be very important to a lot of people. So yeah, I shall be watching their time with great interest.
Mm-hmm. Dave, how about yourself? Were you ever a fan of the Static Shock animated series? Like, because it was in that era of Batman, Superman, Justice League, Batman of the Future.
It was kind of like Batman Beyond and stuff like that. I would catch occasional episodes. I wasn't like, oh, I need to watch every episode kind of thing. So I was a fan of it in the sense of like, I watched it. I was like, yeah, this is fun. Great superhero antics. Great to see a character with that kind of power set, etc. But it was just like, on and off, seeing it when I could, sort of thing. It wasn't like I sat down specifically to watch it, like with something like Spider-Man. But yeah, I think I think he's a great character to get a movie about. But like I'll share my feelings on that when we get more to like Blue Beetle, Batgirl, etc. I think it comes into the same problem. But I do think what is clever is one way. It's a way to build up new characters. Is that, as we've said before, even though you've got like mountains of material to draw from in terms of comic books, and there's plenty of stuff you can adapt, but you still want to be like adding to that legacy and bringing in new characters, because people will be like, oh well, I've seen this character like a million times now, or how many iterations of this character can we get? And we've also talked about as well, like, should you race bend when you've got perfectly good other, like characters which are original characters of that ethnicity there. So I think that this is a good way to sort of bring in those new characters, because when they were talking about the characters which I wasn't as familiar with, like Static Shock, I was like, oh, I am intrigued by that. Who is this person? And I think doing it with like animation is a really clever way of doing it. That's why my reaction was kind of like, oh, they're doing this, this could be the DC's version of Spider-Verse, which I feel that every studio kind of wants to do now. They were like, oh, that won an Oscar. We want the same thing. So I think that that's a really clever way to do it, because one, it gets you great representation, great way of telling diverse stories, but also being more artistic with animation and getting these characters out in front of people, which, I'm sure there's many people who didn't know about Miles Morales before that film came out. So yeah, I think that that's a really clever way of doing it. Obviously the live action stuff, that will come later with the problems with HBO Max. But apart from that, I think it's a really clever way, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with.
Yeah, definitely. I also really appreciate that they did talk about the Milestone Comics and what they're doing in there as well. And just a note on that as well, that in general, I'm glad DC made the time throughout the fandom as well. So like in between segments, as you mentioned up top, Dave, they did a really good job of in between like the big panels of the movies and the TV shows of going, this is also what we're doing in the comics. And this is where we're going forward in the comics as well. So I really like that. Tom, do you want to mention anything about how they handled the comic stuff?
Yeah, no, I was quite happy with how they did it, because obviously they were always going to give like all the attention to the movies and TV show. I wasn't expecting like a huge featurette on right now this is what's happening in comics. So it was nice that we had those just occasional little breaks, like that Wonder Woman event that's coming up. That looks really, really good. Yeah, just in total, I thought it was a nice way to handle it, because it broke up things quite nicely, and people who were maybe watching who don't read the comics, hopefully maybe some of that stuff stuck with them, and they were like, okay, no, I might check these out actually, and then they can step into my web.
Well, here's another web for you to step in, Tom. Video games.
Ooh,
what we got next?
Well, we got a new trailer for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which is the highly anticipated anti-hero co-op game. Now, it was just a trailer. There was no gameplay. I do believe the trailer was shot with the in-game engine, though, so what you see on the trailer is pretty much what you're going to get in the game in terms of like how it looks and how it runs. But yeah, as I said, I'm a little disappointed they didn't like show off any of the gameplay in the trailer, because I feel like, if you're marketing a game, that's kind of a really important feature of the game, how it plays. I joked on the Twitter page that, like, for all we know, this could be a turn-based card game where you collect the characters on cards and you play them against other cards. It's obviously not going to be that, but yeah, it's still very intriguing. I do like DC diving into these games and going co-op with them, because I think it is a very interesting game to play. I think it'll be a very interesting game to play with, like, friends. I call King Shark. But yeah, guys, what did you think of it? I know you're not as big gamers as me, but you excited for this?
I wouldn't say I'm excited for it, because I don't think I'm going to be able to play it if it's only going to be available on PS5 or Xbox S, which I have neither of those, and you can't get a hold of one of those at the minute either. So I don't think I'm going to be playing this when this comes out for a while. Other than that, yes, I agree with you, Tom. I think we've seen a trailer for this game already. So I would feel as if the next thing you show us is some game footage, like actual gameplay of what the game looks like and how it operates. Because, as you said, Tom, that's what people want to see. They want to see the mechanics of the game and if it's worth their time buying. Because, first of all, games cost a lot more than movies, and they require you to invest a lot more time in them. So they have to be worth your time. And sure, the story doesn't look like this. It's not going to be a really compelling story. It's effectively, you guys got to go in and kill the Justice League. That's the brunt of it. But I can see it being a fun game, especially co-op. I can see you like, I'll be Harley Quinn, you be Deadshot, and playing with each other, using each other's power sets, like playing off each other and stuff like that. I think that could be really fun, but I just want to see it. Do you know what I mean? I just want to see what that looks like. But hey, I think from the two video games that we've got, I think this one is going to be the more fun to play in terms of gameplay. But I think the other one, Gotham Knights, which we'll talk about later, has a better story to it. And I don't think I'm going to be playing either of them with the exclusivity of these consoles. But that's another topic altogether.
I'm fine because I've got a Series X, so I'm covered.
He's one of those. He's chosen a side. Yeah, I think that what's interesting as well is the fact that we're getting a Guardians game, which to me, they kind of seem very much of the same appeal and like the approach in some ways of like, oh, team game, you know, like they're both coming from like projects associated with James Gunn, which is interesting. So it kind of shows the popularity then of those teams of characters, which years ago people would have been like, what? You know, they're not going to be as big as Superman or Batman, etc. But I think it is kind of like a testament to how video games can help bolster characters. We've seen it with things like Mortal Kombat, even with Batman. You know, the Arkham games did a lot to kind of like make him even more popular than he already was. And we've seen that with plenty of other characters, and you know, characters that they've wanted to adapt into into films themselves. You know, we're going to be getting like the Uncharted games will be coming in movies, etc. So yeah, I'm more excited at the prospect of like this game kind of boosting up the Suicide Squad, because I feel that after the James Gunn film, there still isn't a kind of like hype, because that film, you know, in some ways underperformed. We're not seeing much kind of like fanfare or like people talking about it afterwards. And I kind of just want to get away from that image of the Suicide Squad being like, oh yeah, it's like Joker and Harley and like, you know, Will Smith, Deadshot and like Enchantress. It's like, no, like, you know, get away from that. It's like, you know, Captain Boomerang, King Shark, that kind of stuff. So I hope that these kind of projects can solidify that this is the Suicide Squad, not that like lame, you know, pretend version in which like Harley and Joker have like a horrific relationship, which shouldn't be dressed up and glorified by people who want romance from a psychotic physical abuse relationship. But yeah.
Well, that discourse has been going for years, my friends, and it's showing no signs of slowing down.
Dave is still salty about that 5 years later.
As long as I still see couples' costumes every year, Halloween of that, I will be salty.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I will say as well that me and Dave, we spoke about this, that I'm not the biggest fan of the actress voicing Harley Quinn. It does for me. It doesn't quite sound like Harley Quinn. It's like she's trying to put on that type of quirky New York accent, which I don't think it works. And then when you listen to what Kaylee Kuko is doing, that's just her natural voice, just with a different range and tone to it. But she's not trying to go for what previous iterations have done. While this one seems like she's trying a bit too hard here. That's just me anyway.
No, I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest
It's a
fan
problem
of
with
this
like a
film.
lot of the voice actresses for her. I find that most of them are just doing an impression of like Harley Quinn and like not a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Tara Strong, the original. So, what we got next, Dave? Speaking of the
Yes.
Suicide Squad,
How perfect is this aligned? So, Peacemaker, the trailer has been revealed, even though James Gunn was kind of like, oh, we can't show you too much yet. It's kind of like we've seen with the other projects of like, oh, it's going to give you like a teaser of a teaser. And then we get shown like a
3-minute trailer.
like full footage. We see like several completed CG shots, etc. It reveals John Cena starring in this violent spin-off of the Suicide Squad, which we were just mentioning there. And this series will carry on where that film left off. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen the film, but he does kind of have an end credit scene with the team which is involved in Task Force X, and we see a lot of those characters then reappear here. We get John Cena in that same costume, and he has to save the world. We see a lot of stuff of him like having issues with his father. We see him and his new sidekick Eagly. We get also his new teammate, which is Vigilante. We get some new cast members and characters, including Leota Adebayo. And then we get other actors and stuff, which, as I said, we had in the film, such as Steve Agee as John Economos. We also have Jennifer Holland as Amelia Harcourt. I also really liked that we had Chukwudi Iwuji. Sorry if I butchered the name there. So he's playing Clemson Mern. And yeah, he's been in a few things like this before. And I was like, oh, that's great casting as this kind of guy who's like hired him. I thought that was perfect. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. But yeah, this is kind of like what I expected in some ways. I was a bit surprised by the kind of like look, but it very much seemed the kind of James Gunn tone that we kind of expected after seeing the Suicide Squad film. So, Tom, what was your expectations of this, and did it exceed them or meet them or lower them?
I think the trailer gave me pretty much what I expected, but that's not to say that that's a bad thing at all, because I was expecting a bonkers hilarious show, and that seems to be what we're getting here. I'm very hyped about the fact that we are getting Vigilante. I think he looks absolutely great, and I just thought he seemed like really great in the trailer. And what I also loved was when he was like speaking in the panel, and they had that little joke where just like they were like, "Oh, John, did you know before today that he was English?" And John Cena's just like, I had no idea. I thought that part was like quite funny. But yeah, it just seems like they, as per usual with any James Gunn project, they had a whale of a time shooting it, and it really shows. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's probably one of my most anticipated DC projects, with the exception of one that we'll be talking about much, much later in the show. So yeah, just I can't wait to get to this soon enough, really. And I'm also hoping that, I don't know, I've got a bad feeling that whilst like Vigilante was like fairly prominent in the trailer and he's looking very cool, I've got a funny feeling he may not last that long. So I'm trying not to get too attached.
He does kind of have like Deadpool Task Force, like X-Force vibes. I don't know if it's just the costume kind of looks like some of the characters that appeared in Deadpool 2, but yeah, I get you in that sense. Jake, what did you think?
I love this trailer. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it looked action-packed. And from the get-go, as soon as I saw the Suicide Squad film, as I said in our review, that John Cena's Peacemaker was one of the standouts for me. I thought he did an incredible job with the character. I thought he was hilarious. He did great in all the action sequences, and I thought that he was playing off the ensemble cast really well. And my main concern going into the series was, could he carry the show by himself as a lead? That was my main concern. And all of that is out the window, I think, from this trailer, because I just think James Gunn has assembled brought in the original cast members from the Suicide Squad film and bring a new one. He's created a different ensemble around him, and I feel as if from the trailer, he's playing off this ensemble really well as well. They're there to support him, so he doesn't have to take the brunt of it. And I think James Gunn knows his John Cena's acting abilities and plays to them really well, just as he does with Dave Bautista. He recognizes his strengths and his weaknesses, and he utilizes them perfectly. And I think he's going to do the same with John Cena here. So I'm really excited for this. I really like they're going to give him a bit more depth, bringing in his father in, and that looks like a really sort of intense scene. Like he's sort of scolding at him, saying like you're a bit of a joke sort of thing. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I'm just so excited for this. I was excited for this before, but now the hype levels are real. Give me this show. January 13th could not be here any faster. And I please hope we can get it in the UK somehow, because they're still saying just HBO Max. I understand for marketing reasons, that's why you're going to do that. But please, come on, guys, we need something over here. Give us something.
Because I'm not saying that if I have to, I'll watch it illegally. For legal reasons, I'm not saying that I'm doing that, but
the thing is, you could always VPN, but it's just VPN's annoying. Yeah, it's long. But I am totally all for this. Absolutely love it. Vigilante looks great, and yeah, good pull, Dave. Because I was going to mention that he seems like this sort of Deadpool character. Because I like that scene where he's talking about we're just like heroes, except we kill people, just bad guys, sometimes. By accident. Yeah. And I got very Deadpool vibes from that. So I'm loving it. I'm all for this series. Give it to me now.
Yeah, I think I'm in some ways more excited for a character like Vigilante, because I think that suits like the kind of TV look. And I think I said to Jake when we were watching it as well, I was like, this is how you do like a TV costume, like, learn from this like CW, in that it kind of still didn't look like amazing, but it kind of like fit the tone and the nature they were going with. And they've done that a lot in the past, in which they're like, if they're doing like lower tier superheroes, it kind of makes more sense then that they would have a more homemade look, and it fits the TV budget. So yeah, I think for me, I don't really usually judge TV trailers all that much, because I find that with a film, because it's like a average 2 hour entity kind of condensed into 3 minutes, you can kind of get an idea of the tone, the look, like the characters. That's them saying, right, this is this complete package I condensed here. Whereas like a TV show can have like multiple different types of episodes. One episode can completely change tone and type of story one to the other. You can't really condense all of that story into like 3 minutes. So I think for me, I always will judge a TV show more by like its first episode, or maybe first 2 episodes, because I always remember in my head, I didn't actually like The Boys from the trailer. I was like, that looks absolutely rubbish. That looks like you're just trying too hard and you're trying to do like a Deadpool. I wasn't a fan at all. And then I watched like the first episode. I was like, oh, I was completely wrong. So I can't really judge it on that. I was kind of surprised that the look of it kind of looked like a bit more like indie film. It didn't look like kind of filmic in the way I expected. And I think that's sometimes some of the problems I have with some of the series we get, etc., or some of the kind of more made for streaming films, etc. And also, as much as
but Dave, they're not made. I understand where you're coming from, but you also have to understand they're not making it for the big screen.
But, so there is. But in my head, if you have something, then like if this is to rival the MCU. It's TV shows, or you've got something even like Game of Thrones, that still had its own. It didn't look like TV. It didn't look like film. It was just premium television or something. So it just, to me, didn't look like that. So it just seemed to me more like, I don't know, something you would get on like YouTube Premium or something, like an original online show or something like that. Something which still has a quality to it, but still didn't look quite like TV, but didn't look quite like film. I also, as much as I've said, before, I really like James Gunn. there is an element to James Gunn that I'm not always like. It doesn't completely vibe with my sense of humor, and that's why I kind of like love Matthew Vaughn so much, because like a lot of his like then humor and tastes and stuff will go into what I enjoy. But I suppose that's a similar appeal with James Gunn. But for the Guardians ones, I think it strikes the right balance of like that dark, sarcastic humor, and there's still like that light, friendly element to it. But when he then goes R-rated, there's a bit more of that bro-y kind of humor of that, like in the Suicide Squad film, the kind of like, if this beach was filled with dicks, you know, like I would like do anything I needed to, all this kind of stuff.
Teenage boy humor.
And I'm not always like a big fan of that. And you can imagine a lot of like college students, etc., be like, oh, this is so funny. And I think it is kind of like a not niche audience, but it's a very specific audience. It hasn't got like a wide appeal. And I feel the Peacemaker as a character. So while in that film I could enjoy it compared to characters like Ratcatcher 2, and Idris Elba's character, etc., Bloodsport, here I'm like, him on his own, it's very much that bro humor. It's very much that element of James Gunn, which isn't like what I enjoy the Guardians films for. I enjoy the more like, you know, darker, like ridiculous stuff, the more ludicrous things. Here it's more like the grotesque kind of like beer drinking silly stuff, which I'm like, not sure if that's, not saying I don't like it, it's just not my favorite. So that'll also be one for me, which I'll see how it comes across in a TV show. But there's a lot of stuff I like. I love the fact that we had Eagly just they walk in the team shot. Surprisingly,
Awesome.
I'm surprised. I'm not sure about like, you know, like when he was like out the window and stuff. I was like, it might be a bit too much here. I kind of just like the subtle joke of him walking with everybody, but I don't want to like overemphasize him, especially when we have had
the hugging joke was great.
But the fact that we've had like Rocket Raccoon, we've had Weasel, etc. I'm like, let's not overdo it now on like the kind of like animal sidekicks. You know, we've done it quite a lot, but I did enjoy the walk in and the hug joke. And also, like you said, Jake, about like the Peacemaker and his dad. When I saw that, I was like, oh, of course, he's got daddy issues. That makes complete sense now. So, yeah, I'm excited for a lot of the supporting cast. Like you said, I definitely think that John Cena's doing a great job, but still cautiously optimistic.
Indeed. Right, let's get into the next thing, which I would say I'm just cautious about. I don't know if I'm optimistic about. And that is DC League of Super Pets. We get our first glimpse of what the film's going to be, starring Crypto, voiced by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Ace, voiced by Kevin Hart, of course. Now, I believe I already knew Kevin Hart was in this, but then when they showed the footage and I heard Kevin Hart's voice and they said, and Kevin Hart as Ace, I was like, I think both you and me, Dave, we looked at each other and went, oh, is he in this as well? And then as soon as that sort of clicked that it's him and The Rock, I was a bit like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this film, just because I appreciate the friendship they have. And actually, when they're promoting the films that they're in together, like when they're talking to like interviewers and stuff like that, I love the banter they have, the ball busting they do. They have a great friendship. But a lot of the actual stuff they're in, I've never been a big fan of. It's kind of a bit silly and a bit stupid for me, their type of comedy they have together. This looks sort of like the same thing, but obviously just with super pets. I don't know. I don't know if it's for me. I think it's appealing to a younger audience without trying to have any nuance like some of the Pixar, like most of the Pixar films and some of the Disney films. I just feel they could do a bit better here. We still haven't seen much. It was just a snippet, but I'm very cautious. Tom, what do you think about this one?
I will say that the trailer did like elicit a bit of a laugh out of me. I don't know. I'm kind of a sucker for like comedy trailers when they do that thing where it's like big dramatic music with like words over, and then it's just like cutting to a mundane scene, and then it's just like even more dramatic stuff, and then cuts back to them. I'm just a sucker for the type of thing. But overall, my thoughts for it were that, as you said, it's targeted for a younger audience. I think younger audiences will probably really like this and will probably resonate quite well with whatever The Rock and Kevin Hart do with it, because as you said, they are quite amusing together, even if I'm not a fan of the films they've done. But as it is not really targeted to me, and I'm not entirely convinced you're going to be wanting to review this for the show, I may skip this one. If that's okay. If you really want to do a review on it, Jake, I will suck it up. But
hey, if it's coming to theaters, we're watching it and we're reviewing it.
Oh God. Well, in that case, I will be watching it. But so in that case, then I'm very cautious as well.
Just loads of people on Twitter like, support cinemas, go watch DC Super Pets.
Yeah, notice how this isn't going on HBO Max.
Whoa. You've opened a can of worms now, Jake. But yeah, I mean, like, it'll, for the audience it's targeted for, it'll be great for them. I'm sure lots of people, even our age, will probably like enjoy it as well. But I don't think it's my thing. So if I have to watch it for the show, awesome. But if I have the chance to skip it, I probably will.
I'd really like to know Michael G's thoughts on this, because when we first discussed when it was announced, he was on the show, and I remember he was not too kind about this news. So no. I would really like to know his thoughts. So Michael G, if you're listening, reach out, because I want to know what you thought of this little clip. But Dave, what did you think?
Yeah, this just, as I mentioned before, not a great Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I don't want to say like I don't like him or anything like that, but again, so getting him here, I think he's kind of miscast as Crypto. I'm not a big Kevin Hart fan, to be honest. I find him a bit annoying, and the fact that he's already been in like projects like this makes me think even more what they're going for, and it kind of makes me scared. Like, after we were just talking about, the great things that could happen, and the fact that we'll be talking about it later with another project, but with the Milestone stuff, you're like, oh yeah, great stuff, animation, blah, blah, blah. And while obviously there's the much larger news in animation, which we haven't talked about, which is Batwheels, which is obviously the animated project from DC to be more excited about. There's projects like that which are clearly made for a certain type of audience, which you were just like, yes, I just don't need to bother myself with that. And you could kind of do the same here. But what miffs me about this is kind of what it represents, and especially the whole like going to cinemas thing, is just the word illumination, which is, this wants to be Secret Life of Pets and, Despicable Me and all of those crappy, careless movies that quite often will maybe have good ideas or good characters or good actors in them, or will even adapt famous stories from the likes of Dr. Seuss and stuff, and then just do like nothing with it. And I'm just like, this isn't a good direction for you, DC. The fact that you have got like an animation division which does, direct to DVD, if you want to call it that, projects, and they've also said, oh, we're going to be doing our first animated film, etc. I'm like, this is not a road you want to go down in kind of like, oh, and this hit up the, the kids market, which loves illumination because it makes bank, let's be fair, it makes like $1 billion with some of those Despicable Me films. And I feel like by getting Kevin Hart, by getting Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, they're just doing exactly that. They're like, oh, let's do, Secret Life of Pets, but with DC characters and with Dwayne and with Kevin Hart, and it'll make a lot of money. And I'm like, it just doesn't ring very good signs for like the state of animation, taste of like young children, and for like the credibility of those actors. But hey, again, it's something that you could possibly just easily avoid. But yeah, best to focus there. If it's somewhere else, I would have said, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if their aim for this movie is just to like help top up their funding for the rest of DC's projects, yeah, go for it. If it means we get a question series because this makes so much money, then I'm all for DC's League of Super Pets. Rock, if you're listening, please get to convince DC to make a question series. I beg of you, and please give me news.
It depends if The Rock can play question. Nothing. Like, will he be like, "Can I play him? Will I change the DC universe forever?"
Okay, Rock, if you're listening, please don't. I'm good. I'm willing.
Stay
I'm
away.
Willing to wait.
You've already got your fingers in 2 DC projects.
He was on the poster
That's
twice, like the DC FanDome poster twice. I was like, really?
Yeah.
It's The Rock, isn't it?
Is.
Tom, what's next, my friend?
Oh, what's next? Well, okay, so let's. I'm just gonna build this up the way Ezra Miller built it up. So don't really have much of a story right now. We don't really have many opinions we can kind of share on this next piece, but we'll try and do something. We've tried to put something together for you so you can understand how we feel. We got a Flash trailer. We got a trailer for the Flash. I don't care what they want to call it. That was a goddamn trailer, and oh my god, it looks like it is going to be balls to the wall, batshit insane, as I so deliciously want. We got some great shots there. What appears to be Barry doing the Flashpoint thing and saving Nora Allen's life. We got a couple of shots in the Batcave, including what appeared to be 2 Barry Allens, and of course Supergirl then as well. We got the back of Batman's head, and it was. I know some people on Twitter were confused as to which Batman it was, but guys, it was Michael Keaton's voice over the trailer. I mean, do we really need to spell it out to you? The very, very cheeky, almost reveal of the Batmobile. Oof. I actually, it was a baller move for them to just cut to black as soon as he did it, and then still have his reaction over it. I thought that was really neat, because he was just oh, you bastards. So yeah,
Jake
that was our reaction.
That, when he was Jay was oh, and then as he did, I was it's gonna cut to black. It's not gonna show it, and then it did, and I was called it.
But yeah, I thought, considering that Ezra Miller, whose look at DC FanDome has apparently excited a lot of people over the interwebs.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yes,
I've seen that.
There's been a lot of thirst posting about it, but we'll leave it at that.
Particularly about the choker.
Yeah. Which was that just a macabre reference to that fan that he choked?
Sorry,
out?
Do you mean Joker? Are you talking about Joker?
But yeah, just the fact that he was building it up as we don't really have much at the moment. We've tried to cut this little thing together for you, and what we got was way more than I was expecting. Not a huge fan of some of the changes to the Flash costume. In some shots it looked all right, but then in some close-ups I just wasn't too sure. But overall, this has got me even more excited for a film than I probably couldn't possibly be more excited for. And also, from what I was picking up from this teaser, even though there was a heavy Batman focus, it does actually seem like it's going to be a Flash movie, and not, as some people have said, a Batman film that's just called The Flash. So we'll wait and see. Obviously, might be different when it comes out. But guys, what did you think? Are you as excited for me, or maybe did this not do anything for you?
Well, the best thing I can say is I'm really torn about this. In 2 different ways. Now, first of all, Ezra Miller, he's just so wonderfully awkward as well. It's hi, I'm Ezra Miller. We're on the set right now. This is the set. He's just so awkward. I love him. I'm really excited for this film. I really do like Ezra Miller as the Flash. Now, the trailer itself, it got me so excited, this trailer, because just hearing Michael Keaton's voice and then seeing the back of the cowl, and then we're seeing the moment that it's clearly a Flashpoint where he goes and saves Nora and he's about to touch her on the shoulder and stuff like that, and then the almost reveal of the Batmobile, and then seeing the 2 Flashes and Supergirl. All of it had me so excited about what this film could be. But I'm sorry to say, Tom, unlike you, I felt as if the way they used this trailer was saying Batman's in this, it was narrated by Michael Keaton. The big focus was leading up to the old manor, Barry in the manor turning on the lights, the reveal of the cowl, the Batmobile and stuff like that, them in the cave. I just felt as if they're really pushing the Batman angle here. I understand why, because it's a big nostalgia twist. Bringing Michael Keaton back is a huge thing, so I understand why they're going for this. I just feel really sad for the Flash, because it's the first time we're seeing the Flash in live action in his own film, and he doesn't seem to be the prime focus of it. Saying that, after seeing the film, that could be completely different. But I'm just saying, in this trailer, they're really pushing the Batman angle, and I think that's really unfair on the character of Flash. There's so many more Batman projects lined up that DC have. Why do you have to make this one so Batman-focused it's called The Flash. Lean into the Flash element of it. So that's what I have to say to that. But I am tremendously excited, nevertheless, because of the Batman aspect, because Michael Keaton's coming back. It was a quick glimpse, but Sasha Gadget does look fantastic as Supergirl in that. And also, it caught me off guard seeing those two Flashes, both played by Ezra Miller. So there's some truth to the rumors we heard about there's an evil version of the Flash played by Ezra Miller. That still could be the case. We don't know. But there's clearly two Flashes played by him. And also, that image of that Andy Muschietti dropped of like the Batman suits with like the Flash logo painted over it. It's that second Flash who's wearing that suit. So that's really interesting why his suit is a combination of Batman and the Flash. So yeah, it has me very excited. But at the same time, I'm just like, I feel sorry for the Flash, man. He deserves a break. And also, lastly as well, I'm not huge on the costume. I think first of all, the shot of him running outside the house and him with the glowing like sort of costume, I was a bit like, oh, I'm not too sure that quite works for me. And then the cowl, that close-up shot of Ezra Miller looking up with the cowl, that doesn't look great either. It doesn't look very well fitted on him. It looks rather large. So yeah, I'm not huge on the suit.
Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. This is the one I had to kind of like rewatch because, again, it was such a like nostalgia play. I think it was like hard for me to kind of like think back on it as a defined like, oh yeah, what was the tone of that? Like when you think back to, as we'll mention later, like the Batman, you're like, oh, like it sticks with you, the music, the vibe, the tone, the look. Whereas this, like I said, it was hard not to just like think of like, oh yeah, we got the Michael Keaton reveal. Like, oh, like, yeah, what was that in again? So, but I don't know. I'm kind of torn with the whole like, Batman or Flash thing, because I think in some ways, if people say, oh, it's more of a Batman film, but then I would agree if it was called Flashpoint, or if it was like, I don't know, something stupid like DC Paradox or whatever. But the fact that they have said The Flash, yeah, that would be horrendously like hokey and like sort of on the nose. But the fact they've called it The Flash, I'm like, okay, well, you have called this The Flash. It would be very hard for you to kind of like rob this character, because at least again, something like Captain America Civil War, you have the Civil War aspect there to kind of go, oh well, it's a Captain America plus Avengers film. So the fact that this isn't like The Flash plus something else, even in, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, that kind of like says like, oh, well, it's about like other characters apart from them. So the fact they haven't done that gives me faith that the script or the direction, and I think that Andy Muschietti has said before as well, that, this isn't Flashpoint, which again, once we saw like his mum, etc., I was like, how is this not that? But whatever, again, I'm still willing to have faith in his vision and direction, that he seems dedicated to making a Flash film in some way or form. And also I do think that the Flash, or at least maybe Ezra Miller's version of the Flash, has kind of cemented himself in a way which kind of is almost not a great comparison now, but a few years ago definitely, with characters like Black Widow and Hawkeye, who could very much succeed and be considered main characters in Avengers, but just never had their own solo adventures. I kind of see like the Flash is maybe that kind of character, in that he bounces off other people and he's a way of like bringing in other characters and other iterations, because I think he worked so well in Zack Snyder's Justice League that I did feel in some ways that I watched a Flash story, because he had such a big part of that finale and elements of that film, that I'm like, yeah, maybe he is like some of the Avengers, like Vision, etc., that he works best within a team film. But saying that, I like Jake would also like to just have a Flash film in which it is just him and, like one of Flash's enemies, etc. But I think it's just at this point we just know who's in this film, and I've just come to accept that. So, but yeah.
Give me Mirror Master, damn it.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with you guys about the costume. I don't think that looks all that great. That shot where he's like in the like underneath like the waterfall and stuff like that, I was a bit like, ugh, like it looked very like kind of rubbery, and like, when you get like one of those costumes on like a costume shop and you can see like the fake muscles in it, it kind of looked very much like that. I was never like a huge fan of the Zack Snyder costume, but again, when we saw that comparison the other day, I was like, oh, even that looks better. Again, and I thought that costume looked better with the cinematography and visuals that Zack Snyder went for. So obviously that was let down by the crappy cut that went before it. So yeah, and I'm just not sure that this kind of like glowing Flash costume kind of suits Ezra Miller's Flash. And as I said to Jake, you need to have a very specific type of head to fit a kind of like head cowl like that. You know, with something like Batman in the past, they kind of just like, okay, well, it's a giant headpiece. Or if it has been like on their head, obviously, unfortunately, we've just had like versions of Batman where it's either like Christian Bale's, which is ultra realistic, so it's hard to really sort of get a true depiction of like, oh, this is the classic cowl, or in which you've got one which like we might see here, which literally like he couldn't like move his neck, etc. So I think the Flash is kind of similar in that like I don't think it looks great on the TV show actor either. Like that very much is like a bulbous kind of like design to it, and
yeah, they've always struggled with that on the TV
yeah,
show.
so I feel that like, you know, the only one that works in my mind is like Chris Evans, like the Captain America one. They managed to make that work mainly from Winter Soldier onwards. Again, maybe it's just because of the shape of, you know, Chris Evans' head. So I don't know if they should do more like head testing when they're casting the Flash. Yeah,
more molds,
like, you know,
more
like,
head
well,
molds.
I will say
we love you as an actor, but you just haven't got the right head shape. Sorry.
Yeah, I will say, like, probably like one of the best cowls I've actually seen in live action, and this may shock some people. It comes from Titans, and it's for Hawk. I don't know. I think that might be the case.
Yeah,
because I don't know what it is, but when I see him in that Hawk outfit with the cowl, and he's got that massive fucking jawline, and he's got that huge smile on, I'm just like, that literally looks like Hawk in the comics. Like, he literally looks like a comic book character. It's quite scary.
Well,
so yeah, I think people need to take some notes from how Titans do their costume. Actually, Titans costume.
I'll definitely bring up another actor who fits a cowl and has the perfect jawline later on. But yeah, yeah, it just doesn't quite fit him. I was never a big I didn't grow up with the Michael Keaton films as much, so there's not as much nostalgia there for me in that element. I did grow up with them, but I just wasn't like watching them all the time. I saw bits and bobs of them as a kid. Unfortunately, I probably got to the age of where I was more into like those type of films by the time Batman and Robin and though Batman Forever came about. So probably the George Clooney one was actually the one I was exposed to the most. So but ultimately I love Michael Keaton as an actor. When I saw the back of that, you know, like cowl and stuff like that, I was like, oh, you know, that does look amazing. And I think it is clever for them to at least have gone like, oh yeah, there's this alternate version of Flash, there's like this version of Supergirl. So again, it doesn't make it just like a Batman movie plus the Flash. It's kind of giving you a different variety of characters, and you have some crazy escapades with this alternate version of Flash. So definitely stuff that I'm intrigued with that element as well. But yeah, just lost stuff everywhere. And so yeah, maybe we'll need a full trailer to kind of get an idea, but lots of thoughts. Maybe that'll be the feeling on the film. But yeah, I was lots of thoughts lost in the multiverse. Help me. I was also disappointed that Tom said, "Oh, I'm going to introduce this in the way that Ezra Miller did," and he didn't dress up as a member of the Beatles. It didn't come out as.
It's true.
Is that
we
what you
said
think
he
the
looked like
Beatles
John Lennon.
He looked like John Lennon.
Maybe apart from the choker.
He looked like John Lennon.
Okay, maybe I'll give you that. I think my last thoughts on this whole thing is, like, I've said it before, but I'll just reassert it just in case someone at DC is listening and they retweeted us, so maybe they are. But I'm not opposed to the concept of there being an evil version of Barry or that being like the main supervillain. But if you dare call him Reverse Flash, I'm going to burn down your entire fucking house.
Oh, no.
Right?
No.
Okay?
No. They dare not call him Eobard Thawne.
Eobard Thawne is Reverse Flash. That's it. But you can say it's an evil Barry Allen. Hell, actually, no, don't say it's Savitar. That's going to leave a very bad taste in my mouth. But just do not try and say that, like, Reverse Flash in this universe is just an evil version of Barry Allen, or I will smack
You'll have a Mandarin moment. He's like, I am the Mandarin. You're like, I am the Reverse Flash. And then they'll have to do a short film to retcon that. And then, like, that...
When Eobard shows up and he's just like, I'm not happy about this, mate.
Years later, there'll be like a Green Arrow film in which that version of the Flash shows up in prison somewhere, and like he's got a Liverpudlian accent.
Tom, how mad would you be if the other Flash is Wally West?
There would be a reckoning. There would be a fucking reckoning. Let me tell you now, it would not end well for DC.
I think the fact that Tom was taking a cigarette at that moment was perfect. Just the fact he's like, you don't want to mess with me, DC, when you mention this. He said about burning the house down. That's how he does it. He flicks the cigarette and like...
Right, let's move on then. Dave, what have we got next?
So next we have Blue Beetle gets a first look at the suit and concept art. We've got, which was great. Another good element of this entire event was that we got a lot of comments from the filmmakers, and the great aspect of like this and Batgirl was that you were seeing these kind of directing duos and, you know, creators that of the sort of right ethnicity, of color, of BAME backgrounds, which is fantastic. And you also got to see the enthusiasm from the actor who's playing Blue Beetle. So this was like a really nice panel. It was really touching in that way to see that enthusiasm, to see how they're approaching it. And it was just really refreshing to see a sort of different character. But Jake, I'll go to you first. Obviously, I know you're very excited about this, but there is the negative side, as we mentioned before, with projects like Static Shock. So what did you think of the concept art and the first look at this, and your overall thoughts?
So excited for this fucking film. I think it's about time Blue Beetle got his time to shine, man. Like, this character is so fucking cool, and like, just like going to the panel itself, like you said, Dave, it's just so wonderful to hear from the up and coming young talent. You know, these new kids on the block who have a voice, they have a vision, and, you know, because it was Angel Manuel Soto, the director. I can't remember the writer's name, but the writer was also with him. And you could see in their chemistry that they've been working together for a long time. They know each other, how they work, and they've got a true vision for this film. And I just love that. They're just so infectious. And then the kid playing Hammy Reyes, like, the amount of enthusiasm coming off him, he was so excited to be playing this, to be playing the first Latino superhero on screen for DC. This is such an honor for him. I'm so excited for him, and it is so important for this film to go out there for the Latino community, because it's about time they got a hero as well. Do you know what I mean? And Jaime Reyes is, I would say, pretty much the perfect Latino superhero to represent that community. So, and I said this to you, Dave, as well. I think this is also DC's answer to Miles Morales in a way, in the sense of like the background he's from, the community he's from, and also in a way his character. He's very quippy. His power set, while not being a spider, is a beetle. So there's an insect in there. And I just think the power set that Jaime Reyes comes on, like the lore behind his Blue Beetle is, you know, alien technology. Sort of like a symbiote in a way. It latches onto him and it has a mind of its own. I just can't wait for that. Basically a better version of what Venom is. You can have this sort, I wouldn't go as far as say buddy cop, but a sort of bromance of him always arguing with the Beetle that has a mind of its own. It's always wanting to attack people. He's like, no shit, stop, do that. And while also balancing his life as a teenager, his life with family, with his friends, seeing that balance, you know, almost Miles Morales meets Peter Parker in a way. He's that ultimate sort of combination. And I'm just so excited to see this character on screen. But yes, the negative is, why the fuck is this film made for HBO Max? Like, we've said it before, I'm just tired that they keep announcing these wonderful, exciting projects, stuff that we need to see, stuff that's so important to people. And they're like, yeah, just chuck it on the streaming service. Now, I understand they want to build up their streaming service, but you can do that with so many other projects, so many other TV shows, like with Peacemaker, like with the Harley Quinn show, Doom Patrol, all these other stuff that you got going down the line. Something like Blue Beetle and Batgirl, Black Canary, Static Shock, there seems to be a trend here that if you're a woman or a person of color, it seems like you're not worthy for the big screen. Let's just chuck you on the streaming service because it's a riskier project. Do you know what I mean? We don't know how it's going to go down. That shtick is old now because we've seen with films like Black Panther doing over $1 billion, Into the Spider-Verse winning an Oscar. Like, come on, let's get past this shit now. These films are going to be successful. There is a crowd for them. People want to see these characters done well. And also for the pure fact that Blue Beetle, his power set needs to be seen on the big screen. It needs to have the effects budget of a film to really be this grand spectacle, because it is so cool what he can do, man. It is just so cool, and I feel as if you're being robbed. And I also mentioned this to Dave, that if you're going into the film knowing that you're not filming for the big screen, you're filming for a streaming service, that does something to you psychologically as a filmmaker. It, in a way, well, hopefully in a way, it doesn't restrict you, but sometimes you think, oh, you're not thinking bigger because you're not thinking for the big screen. And there's also, I would imagine, some limitations on budget as well, of Warner Bros. Going, well, we're not going to give you the budget of a film because it's just going on a streaming service. So I have big concerns in that aspect of it. But the film itself, the creators involved, so excited, and the concept art looks wonderful.
Yeah, I do want to just echo a lot of those thoughts with the whether it should go theatrical, because I also think as well that, as well as I'm not too sure if somebody would limit their scope knowing that they're going into something which is made for streaming. I do agree with you, that probably is an element, but I also think that there's an element as a viewer as well. You know, I recently talked about on Twitter, Dune, for example. I just can't see how because I used to get customers all the time when I worked in Kerry's, just oh, I can't understand what they're saying, it's too loud. And I'm because you're watching something that was made for something that has 10, 11 speakers in it. You know, it's a cinema film. And if you want to watch that film at home, then you need to get something at least a soundbar or something. But that still doesn't come close. And, you know, but a TV which has 2 shitty little 5-watt speakers in it, you know, especially with that kind of film, it's not going to come across well. You're not going to understand what they're saying. So then that ultimately means then the people who are making the CG, doing the sound mix, are then going to go, oh, well, let's test this on a television. We won't test it in a theater. They will then limit the sound mix. They will then limit different elements of it like that. Can we see this cinematography in the dark? Obviously there's elements of where you get films like Godzilla, etc., where people are oh, I can't see what's happening, because on a big screen you can, because you've got that clarity there of the darks, etc., but you don't have that with certain LED TVs. So there's also that as well. And I think that that's a big element, is if you're talking about a character like you said, which has a big visual aesthetic to it, because I also think, as well as Miles Morales, there's a big Iron Man appeal there as well, is the fact that this character could do all this technological stuff, kind of you know, have guns come straight out of his armor, etc. I think that's a big appeal with the character. And also, let's not forget, Aquaman made $1 billion, a DC property with a character, you know, an actor of color, which is a very obscure character. This not, you know, this isn't Batman, this isn't Superman. Aquaman made $1 billion. How can the studio that had $1 billion Aquaman film then go, we think this is too risky as a project to put on the big screen? What are you on about? What are you completely lost your minds? You had faith in Jared Leto's Joker and not this. What are you on about? I don't understand it. So yeah, Tom, you're nodding your head. Obviously, I know you agree. Your overall thoughts?
I mean, I pretty much echo all of your concerns from the fact that, you know, I'm basically with you, Dave. It's just ridiculous. The decisions that Warner Brothers Studios have made in the past, the things they've put repeated faith in, and yet something like this, they're just nah, better put it on HBO Max, just to be safe, just be on the safe side. And I do worry about it limiting it as a result, as Jake said, because if you know that you're not making it for the big screen, you're not going to be making a big screen film.
Well, also, even if they were making a Blue Beetle series, that would be fine. I don't understand why HBO and Warner Brothers are preferencing films, because I think that a lot of people, and Marvel seems to understand this, and Star Wars even understands it, that they go, no, series are the, like, what will get the subscribers in. Something that lasts 8 weeks, that's like 8 hours of content. Why are they focusing so much on movies? Like, focus on series if you want to do that. I don't understand, like, films are films, put them in the cinema. Netflix, yes, they do have a lot of successes with some of their films, but ultimately it's your Bridgertons, your Squid Games that get people subscribing. So I just don't get that as well.
Mm-hmm. And also, I want to say on that note, like, a lot of Netflix do a lot of original films, but they're pretty much the only ones that do like high quality original films, because even if the original Disney Plus films sort of go back to that Disney Channel sort of like, directed TV movie sort of style, there's not as much effort put into that movie as you would a theatrical.
Yeah, because my problems with Peacemaker, which also, like, the way it's shot would also be my concerns with something like Batgirl and Blue Beetle, of being like, oh, this doesn't look like a film, it doesn't look like TV, etc.
Yeah. But yeah, because I think you guys have covered like all the negatives of this, so I'll just try and like share my positive thoughts now. I'm also very hyped for this. Although now that you've said about like the whole like series and film aspect, I am kind of wishing this was a series now, but the concept art looks fantastic. I think the suit looks amazing. I liked that there was that little reference to Cord Industries in the background. I don't know if it'd been previously announced that like Ted Cord would be a part of the film, but I kind of hope he is. Because there was many things that annoyed me about the CW verse, but one of the things that really annoyed me was that they constantly teased Cord Industries. Like they'd be like a robbery there, or they'd just be there to like pick up some sort of scientific equipment, or like there was like so many references to it, and yet they never brought the character into the show. So it was always a bit like, So I hope this isn't the case now, where they're just like, oh yeah, here's Cord Industries, but it's literally just a reference. We're not giving you Ted Cord. I know obviously Jaime Reyes has to be the focus, but I also think like seeing a relationship with him and Ted Cord could be interesting. But I also think it will depend on how they're handling the origin, whether they're making this like a true origin of Blue Beetle, and Jaime Reyes is like the first Blue Beetle because he's got the scarab, or whether they do dive into the fact that the scarab was with someone initially, and then Ted Cord briefly became Blue Beetle in like his honor after he died, and now Jaime's picked.
It's a Miles Morales thing again.
It kind of, yeah, there are definitely similarities there. So yeah, I'm very interested to see actually like how they will handle like sort of his origins. I don't mind either way. If they want to make him like the first Blue Beetle, fantastic. If they want to do it in the way that they still honor like the legacy of characters, again, I will love that. But just don't tease Cord Industries, and then don't give me Ted Cord, because I will be sad. Because like I would love to see a Blue Beetle Booster Gold film in the future.
Yeah, because I also want to just add on the positives. I also love like the concept art, because it gives me faith that sometimes I've been a bit 50-50 with the character in like things like animation, is, to be honest, where I've experienced him the most. Where sometimes I'm a bit like, this guy's a bit too kind of, I know, we disagree, but a bit too Green Lantern for me sometimes, of just like, he can do anything. Like he can like get out this like bazooka and everything like that. I kind of like enjoy them more, whereas some animation is done. And I'm not always sure of him as like a member of the Teen Titans, etc. But here I like that he is like, yeah, he's his own character. And it's not like kind of just like some cyborg alternative. It seems like he very much is his own thing. And in that concept art, it looks like it's not just like a machine that can do anything. It looks like it would have some sort of restraints or some specific elements to it. Like, this is the power set, not just this can do anything.
Mm-hmm. And I also think very much like the MCU did with Shang-Chi, that they made it, I think it was pretty much their first proper family film, in sense of like that was the theme of the film, proper family. Black Widow, you could also argue as well.
Family.
But I feel as if, because family. Because Manuel Soto also said that is a big theme of the film, is family. And I know with the Latino community, family is such a big thing. I really hope they do lean into that and explore that in this film as well.